Teaser Gracie. Teaser Gracie is what they've labeled Caesar. Caesar came out and made a statement about one of his proteges, Nick Diaz, and just said, look, he's going to fight by the end of this year. That was the only detail that we got. Now, that's interesting. That got my interest enough to bring it to you guys in case you happen to miss it. What is the best way to roll out a Nick Diaz fight? And that always has to be a very calculated decision. That decision has been made. The decision is to release, to get a buzz, to get a feel for it. That's what happened yesterday through Caesar Gracie. That was the decision. Is that the right one? In this sport, in a broad stroke, yeah, for sure. But when you have a star, it's different. Now, when you have a star who has spent his entire career as a contender, it's significantly different. When you have a fighter who can fill up an arena, who can garner attention, but is going to have nothing to do with a title for the first time ever, do you roll it out the same way? I'm just asking the question because there's a marketing arm to a company known as the UFC that is extremely powerful. And the way this business works is really easy. You have a contract. You tell somebody you would like to activate the contract, and then they find you an opponent. Like it's really easy to do. So it was for sure calculated by Caesar. I'm just trying to read into it. Why was he laying this out? Why by the end of the year? We could have this fight done within 3 weeks. We could have him in the ring within 3 months. Who is the opponent going to be? And that gets a little bit more complicated. When Nick even returned against Robbie, which nobody expected Nick to look great. He'd been out for a period of time. Nick ended up looking great. The only one that didn't know how well Nick was doing was Nick. Nick might have been winning that fight. Nick was taking a lot of shots, and I don't think he was giving himself credit for how many shots he was landing, because he was landing. Nick looked great. Really, really good, particularly for a layoff, particularly at a new weight class, particularly against a former opponent, by the way, for a former world champion. Hard night, hard match. But there was talk, even that night, that with one win, he was going to be fighting for the belt. Well, that was going to be on Adesanya at 85, or he was going to cut down Kamaru Usman. I'm not bullying you into thinking that if we could go back in that time and we could get Nick through that fight and Nick get his hand raised, that he was going to walk in there for a title fight of a weight class of his choice. What I'm trying to remind you of is nobody laughed at him when he said it. Nick has been a contender his entire career, but now he's removed himself, right? He said I think it was 5 years before he got in there with Robbie. Then he changed the weight the week of, and then, it's just one of those things where if you're a Nick fan, the only thing that you saw, first off, you look good. And second off, you got to stay active. No more of these breaks. That break is what came back and beat you. And that's, all right, great, let's turn Nick around. Let's get him in there real quickly. Now, that was the problem that Dana ran into. I don't know who to put him against. And even if Dana didn't come out and say it in those words, that was the problem that Dana had. I don't know who to put Nick with. I got a high-dollar guy who's in very high demand, who his entire life has been a contender except for now. We're in uncharted waters, and I just don't know what to do. This is Dana thinking, I've had a Nick Diaz plan for 15 years. But now he's not a contender anymore. What do I do with him? And by the way, I don't even know for sure what weight class. Right, he fought Robbie at it was some weird weight. Did they do like 178 or something like that? Maybe they even changed all the way up to 185. Remember when that got weird like the week of? So now you're in a situation of what are we going to do, which is why I'm asking, is it best for Caesar to come out and give us this tease and now we got to go connect the dots? Or is it best to wait and have the whole thing done and have it dropped by a marketing company known as the Ultimate Fighting Championship? It's just a tough question, but it's a different spot, and I'm not sold on the idea that Caesar took that into consideration. I'm not sold on the idea that Caesar knew, oh, wait a minute, I'm not dealing with the top guy in the world. I'm not dealing with a guy that can go out and call out world champions to get responses from them and make the whole public wonder, are you going to get that? Because, that is exactly where we were. Nick started saying, I'm going to go beat up Kamaru Usman. I'm going to stay up here and beat up Adesanya. He started saying those things, and it got to the point where Dana finally even got asked about it. If it was a silly and ridiculous claim, nobody would have brought it to Dana. They actually brought it to, hey, is this a number one contenders fight? With a win, could he go in there against Kamaru Usman, right? So it gets interesting. Where do you go with Nick? Because first thing we have to know is, why are we fighting? If you're just fighting for money, which is okay and normal, every fighter gets to a point in his career where if he was to tell the truth and they said, why are you still doing this? His response would be, because they're still paying me. If Nick's at that point, he needs a cover story. That answer's not going to work. That answer's never worked. And when he took the break after Robbie, it made it hard on guys like me that are pro Nick. The one thing that we need, and the only thing that we need, is a good, quick turnaround. Nick to have that experience that he did, not have 5 years off and get right back in. That's the only thing we need, and we didn't get it. And now we're told that there's going to be even more time by the end of the year. Are we to make believe things get better on any athlete with a break? Are we to make believe that Tom Brady, as good as he is, could take a year off and return and still be as good? It's just not the way sports work. So let's take the information we've been given. It's nice of Caesar to give it to us. We love Nick updates, don't we? So now we got one. And we got one from the top. Sometime this year, going to be a return. All right, great. Now let's start working everything backwards. Are we in training yet? Once we get to training, let's establish a weight class. Let's then figure out what this is for. And damn near any answer works. If a guy wanted to say it because I just want to do one more, because how I want my story told, because I want to correct the wrongs, because this is what keeps me on track. BJ Penn was running that one for a while. Hey, this isn't even about fight. I need the fighting to keep my other life on track. It worked. Like, there's not a wrong answer is the point that I'm trying to make, but we do have to establish what is it for, and then we can start to find out who the opponent's going to be. And that's where things are in a very unique spot for Nick, who was a main event, who was the top draw, who was in a number one contenders fight, who was in a world title fight his whole career. He's now in a different spot, and we got to start at square one. What weight class are we talking? When we establish that, we're coming back. What are we coming back for? These aren't trick questions. These are just things that we must have if we're going to put the pieces together. You've come out and told us the final step, which means you would like us to work backwards. This is what we're going to need. We're going to need it in that order. We're going to need to find the right opponent. And then we're going to need to go out and sell that idea.